Hi, welcome to Audiobook Academy. This is a self-paced audiobook. There's no need to keep an eye on things. Just pay attention. Thank you for taking the time to listen. This is a book summary of Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. All of us have felt that crippling embarrassment at one time or another, and the memory of the experience often lingers with us long after the fact. Shame. 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 Chanted by a nun as Cersei Lannister was paraded naked through the streets of Winterfell in Game of Thrones may have resonated with so many of us. However, perhaps the most poignant aspect of the scene is the character's vulnerability. Cersei's vulnerability allowed us to forget, for a brief moment, that she was a universally despised villain. Despite this, and perhaps even because of it, we wanted her to rise up and take revenge. Vulnerability can be a powerful tool. Brené Brown's first book on shame and vulnerability, Daring Greatly, introduces important concepts like strength and power. When we accept that struggle is a universal human condition, we have the courage to take risks. In the field of shame and vulnerability, Brené Brown is one of the world's foremost experts. TEDx Houston allowed her to share her personal story, and as a result, she attracted a large audience. Following its appearance in a TED Talk, it broke the internet when it went viral. Her qualitative research has led to groundbreaking findings on how we experience shame, vulnerability, courage, compassion, and connection, and Brown calls herself a researcher-storyteller. A brief discussion of what it means to dare greatly and how each of us needs to enter the arena equipped to recognize and overcome struggle will be covered. To put it simply, if you're going to get into the fray, you need to know that you're going to have a hard time. In the end, however, the ultimate glory awaits, which is achieving goals and fully participating in the game of life itself. Getting ready to enter the ring. To be a gladiator in the Colosseum, one must be incredibly brave and courageous. What do we have the guts to go into situations where we don't know what will happen? For Daring Greatly, Theodore Roosevelt served as a major source of inspiration. Roosevelt discusses the importance of courageous living in The Man in the Arena, one of his most famous speeches. The speech has been hailed as one of the greatest speeches of all time, and has become a well-known metaphor for living one's life. Nelson Mandela gave Francois Pienaar a copy of his speech before the 1995 Rugby World Cup final. As a result, the All Blacks were inspired to victory by the words spoken by the South African team. In addition, they were instrumental in bringing a nation still reeling from the effects of apartheid together. Those words of Franklin D. Roosevelt are a rousing call for all of us to step into the arena. When someone points out the flaws in a strongman's performance or suggests ways they could have been done better, he says, it is not the critic who counts. For the man who is brave enough to put his body on the line, whose face has been splattered with dust and sweat and blood, who errs, who falls short, but who does actually try to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end that he has succeeded, and at the worst, if he fails, at the very least, at the very worst, who, in the end, at the very least, knows the triumph of high achievement. All of us need to be in the game, we all need to be in the arena. The message is clear. Failure is part of the learning process. In the words of gladiators Maximus Decimus Meridius, what we do in life echoes in eternity. There is no need to be brave all the time, but we do need to live courageously at all times. There is a distinct difference between bravery and courage, which stems from the fact that the word courage comes from the Latin word for heart. In other words, courage is about living life from the heart and being aware of our own feelings. Fearlessness in the face of adversity. Whether or not we have the courage to enter the arena depends on whether or not we are fully committed. All in is the mantra of Brown's philosophy of living, according to him. All aspects of our lives must be embraced and we must find our purpose and meaning in them. Living with all of one's heart means finding the strength and courage to enter the arena and give life one's best effort. In Brown's view, there are three essential components to wholehearted living. The three C's, courage, compassion, and connection, are all prerequisites. We need to have the guts to put ourselves out there and be open to the possibility of rejection. There are many things in life that will cause us to feel anxious and apprehensive. We must persevere, accept failure, and strive valiantly despite our faces being marred by dust, sweat, and blood. Additionally, we need to be kind to ourselves and those around us. Everyone has a difficult time, and no one is exempt from the pain that comes with it. We can embrace empathy once we come to terms with this. And it is connection, the final aspect of wholehearted living, that emerges from the development of empathy. It's a common belief that we're all here because we share a common goal. In order for us to change the world, we must first connect with one another. "No man is an island," said John Donne, has become a metaphor for how important it is to build relationships with others. Having a sense of worth and purpose gives us a reason to put ourselves out there in the first place. What we're up against in the ring. In order to live fully, we must have a strong sense of self-identity, a strong sense of community, and above all, a strong sense of love. When confronted with the challenges in our path, these emotions are put in jeopardy. A culture of scarcity pervades our society, according to Brown, in which we believe that there is not enough to go around. Shame appears when we believe there is never enough. Because of our own failings, we often shame and blame previous generations, which perpetuates the cycle. We're also becoming more and more disinterested in things. The fact that we're constantly preoccupied with what's not here makes it difficult to be fully present. FOMO, or the fear of missing out, causes us to live in a constant state of desire for what we lack. We compare ourselves to others when we don't feel like we're lacking, or when we're distracted and disengaged. Even if we tell ourselves that perfection doesn't exist, we still cling to the idea that it does. The myth of perfection must be abandoned in order for each of us to begin accepting the unique person we each are. What makes you vulnerable is beautiful, according to Brown. Vulnerability, not perfection, is the true beauty. But despite the discomfort of vulnerability, it's also not excruciating. Overall, it's important and helps us grow as individuals. In order to build meaningful relationships, we need to be able to admit our flaws and open up to others. We need to show our vulnerability and open ourselves up in order to connect with others. According to Brown, we must allow ourselves to be seen and be open to our flaws. Goffman refers to impression management as more than just our outward appearance. Being open to being seen entails exposing oneself to possible harm. As a result of our fear of what others may think, we often avoid revealing our true selves. We're afraid of being cut off. There are many ways in which we feel shame. Individual shame is the nagging feeling we get when we feel inadequate and think we're not good enough. When we are afraid to be vulnerable in a relationship, we are suffering from relationship shame. When trust in a relationship isn't nurtured because of a lack of honesty, the relationship will eventually break down. Intimacy necessitates a willingness to expose oneself to the other and be vulnerable and trusted. Shaming is a topic that Brown discusses in his book Dare to Lead, and he points out how much contemporary workplace culture is built on shame. Shame must be scrutinized more rigorously by all of us, but this is especially important when it comes to children. Raising a generation free of guilt and fear, according to Brown, has the potential to alter the course of history. Because kids need the confidence and joy of being creative, shame is particularly harmful for them. In order to prevent feelings of shame from stifling joy and creativity, it is critical that schools and families promote messages of openness and vulnerability. Afraid and anxious children cannot learn, so we must teach them how to enter the arena. In the arena, there's room for error. The paradox of vulnerability exists. What emotions do you experience when you witness someone else's fragility? We admire other people's vulnerability, but we're embarrassed by our own. What's going on? Rather than seeing vulnerability as a weakness, Brown encourages us to see it as a strength and says that we must identify and embrace it. Our author, for instance, discussed her breakdown or spiritual awakening. At a TEDx conference in 2010, she shared her story with an audience of 500 people. For this open and honest account, she rose to fame, and the power of vulnerability received massive attention on the internet. As a result of this, her open and honest account of her ill-advised attempt at living life to the fullest is the main reason. She made her perceived flaws relatable, and as a result, her audience came to admire her openness and honesty. So, why do we not see these qualities in ourselves when we look in the mirror? What's the point of hiding our flaws and avoiding being vulnerable to others? Since vulnerability can be courageous in others but weak in ourselves, we refer to this paradox as the vulnerability paradox. Once we grasp the concept of vulnerability, we can see that it is rooted in feelings of shame and fear, but it is also rooted in feelings of joy and inventiveness. Love and companionship can be found here as well. Opening ourselves up to others' scrutiny is a harrowing experience. After all, the arena is a terrifying place. The losers, or what Brown calls a vulnerability hangover, may occur after you expose your vulnerability. A common reaction after taking a risk is to feel guilty about our actions and wake up saying things like, "Oh crap, I can't believe I said that." When we open ourselves up to others, it can be frightening. We all have those moments where we wish we could go back and undo the damage we've done to ourselves. Brown's TEDx talk is a perfect example of this idea in action. To combat her post-talk vulnerability hangover, Brown was desperate to delete the information she had shared. Her vulnerability had inspired others to take risks and leaps of faith that they normally wouldn't have taken. Aren't you bored? That being in the ring isn't for the faint of heart has been established. Isn't the real question, how do we interact with and respond to the people watching us? Crowds of people react to us in a variety of ways in the arena, and this will never change. As long as we're fortunate, we can rely on others for help. On the other hand, how do we handle the onlookers? The first step is to acknowledge that they exist. Even if they're just there to watch, they've shown up. Be grateful for the people who show up, Brown advises. In the end, there will be those who believe in our cause, and those who will join us in the arena. While it is true that most of the people in the crowd do not contribute anything of value, this is not the case. Many times, the audience forms a horde, and this horde frequently arrives enraged. As a result of their own self-esteem issues, these individuals typically want you to fail so they can use your failure as an excuse to stop trying altogether. Those who have low self-esteem, says Brown, should work on improving their own self-esteem rather than expecting others to do so for them. We must shift our focus away from those who disapprove of who we are and toward those who do. There is a tendency among spectators to project their resentment onto others and live vicariously through them. What we should ask ourselves is, why should I care if they don't like me? Rather than who cares? Greatness can only be attained by those who are seated in the arena. Today I saw a slave become more powerful than the Emperor of Rome, says a character in the film Gladiator. Ending on a high note. To truly live, one must first step into the arena and test their mettle. But how do we approach this for those of us who are afraid or anxious? All of us need to have hope in our lives, and the good news is that we can learn how to have hope. Setting goals gives us something to aim for, which in turn gives us a sense of purpose. In order to stay motivated and excited about the future, setting goals is essential. Make a list of your objectives, and then map out a strategy for achieving them. As a society, we have a tendency to expect things to be simple. Our outlook must be adjusted to account for the likelihood of difficulties and roadblocks. However, we can rely on each other for support when things get difficult. You need to be prepared for challenges and be honest about your weaknesses. In doing so, we cultivate the ability to believe. According to Brown, we must all learn to embrace our vulnerability. We must make decisions that are in line with our values of courage, compassion, and connection, and we must recognize that asking for help is a sign of strength. Positive feelings are also numbed when we numb ourselves to our own vulnerability and the things that cause us anxiety. To paraphrase our author's profound message, believing in one's own worth is the most telling sign of someone who lives life to the fullest. As a result of this self-belief, people who feel unworthy are disconnected not because of others, but rather because of their own fear and self-sabotage. If we believe we are deserving of love and connection, we can get it. Even in the face of adversity, it is important to show your true self, be open and honest about your reflection, and express gratitude even when things are difficult. Have faith in your own abilities. We must also teach children that they are loved and that they are part of something bigger than themselves. They'll be more motivated to live life to the fullest, be imaginative, and be abundant as a result of these feelings. How to truly live is to have the courage to enter the arena, the courage to fail, and the courage to be vulnerable. Remember, too, that he who fails fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat, fail. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Please don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. See you in next audiobook.